Well, I was going to give you a shooting demonstration and how well this thing operates and functions, but it is raining too hard here in Western Oregon, and I don't want to take this beauty out into the rain. I just finished redoing the stock, but let's take a trip back in time, and I'll show you how this beautiful trapdoor Springfield was when it came to this. Let's see how this thing ejects. I just love this trapdoor mechanism. Flip this up, and now we've got brass on the floor. The trapdoor Springfield from 1873. Let's take a look at how we brought this thing back to its current state. Hello. If you've been watching my videos, you know I got an 1873 trapdoor Springfield in. And this is not only the oldest rifle we've had in the shop, but it's also the longest. This thing is just about 44 inches long. I'm sorry, take that back. It's 4 feet, 4 inches long. Little difference. All right, got to do my math. But over 4 feet long. I think it's 4 feet, 4 inches, like I said. And this thing is in for not an overhaul, more of a preservation. We're not going to restore it to make it look like new. We're going to go through it, make sure it's cleaned, it's oiled, it's going to last for years in storage probably. It's good enough to go shoot, and we're going to make it look like an 1873 trapdoor Springfield should. We're going to take off this shiny coat, and we're going to, like I said, we're going to preserve this for future generations, okay? When it comes to antique and historical guns like this, we don't own them. We just have them for a while, all right? So, you know, we want to keep this, and like I said, the next generation get to enjoy it just like it is. All right, so come on along and we'll do a preservation on this. A couple of the first things you're going to notice is that it's shiny. We're going to take some type of urethane coating on here. We're going to take this off. And it's obvious this gun has been taken apart. You know, whoever did this urethane did not get it on some of the metal, did get it on other parts of the metal. But we can tell this gun has been taken apart, and I'm going to say fairly recently, so within the last 100 years. And when they put it back together, they did some funny things here. You'll see this one here. This is a stacking swivel, and right here is a sling swivel. You know, this is the sling mount and the stacking swivel, and it's on backwards. I thought that was kind of funny. So whoever had this gun apart and put it back together has this flipped around. So we're obviously going to fix that before we put it back together. There's a couple of screw heads that need to be addressed. We can see that right off. You can tell here there's a lot of urethane on this spring. This spring should be a spring, and it's jammed in there. There's no spring action to it. So that's going to have to be addressed, cleaned, driven out of there. And what we're doing is we're going to separate all the metal from the wood. We'll clean the wood up. We'll get everything cleaned, oiled, and we'll get it all put back together, and you'll be along for the ride to see how we do it. The first thing you see how shiny this is. Somebody put some type of urethane on here, and they didn't do a very good job. You can see this is a spring-loaded clip, and the urethane right over it. So this clip is no longer even moving. If we look down here, there's another. This is it's a spring-loaded pin. And what this does, this is what retains that band in place. And you can see how you see where that spring pushes in and pops up. The one down here, and you can see it's got a nice little coating of urethane right on and it's all gummed up, and this spring is no longer even functional. This band is just kind of on there just by friction. So it's not being retained by that clip. All right, one of the interesting features is it does have a cleaning rod. 1873, so we've gone away from the muzzle loader. This is now a breech loader, that trapdoor mechanism. But kind of one of the holdovers is that long ramrod, and this is retained by its own spring pressure. You can see it's got a little bit of spring to it, and this groove, there's a little metal block in there that holds this rod just by springing into that little. As we pull it out, and now we just unhooked it. We see that groove, and we'll get a close-up picture of that too. And you'll see that now it just slides right on out. And like I said, this is a 4-foot long rifle, so it's a good thing we have a 12-foot long bench here to work on. But here's that here's that groove and how it was retained in there. And you see that little metal block that held that long ramrod in. And once this is out, let's see if we can take this band off without using any tools. So we've compressed this band. There we go. So now, you could see if I had a sling attached here and it attached down the other end of the rifle, it would totally block and cover that stacking swivel. So this is obviously on backwards. It would sit, or should sit, just like that. That would be correct. Like I said, we saw the rifle's better already. Let's put it back together. No, we're gonna keep going from here. All right, so let's continue to separate the wood from the metal. This band, this band down here is kind of stuck in place. Oh, no, it's not. Look at that. This one's gonna come right off too. All right, so we got this other band off, and there's no visible rust in here. We'll still clean this up a little bit before we put it back together. But some of these parts, so we've gotten this far here with no tools, but you can see how this spring is not springing. It's not bouncing back. So we're gonna drift that out. Okay, we'll go ahead and take care of that. All right, let me move the camera around and we'll do some more disassembly. All right, so we're gonna start with these two big giant screws here on the left side. And before we get a screwdriver tip that's gonna fit those exactly, I'm gonna take a dental pick, just a regular metal dental pick, and I'm going to pick out any kind of debris, any kind of dirt, any kind of junk that's down in that screw head that's going to prevent that screwdriver tip from getting all the way down into that groove. And there's a little bit of rust in here, but nothing too bad. Not like I'm getting a lot of dirt out. But I do want to clean this. Anytime you got a rifle this old, and the last thing you want to do is bugger up your screw head. There's a better term for bugger up. It sounds kind of British to me. But here you're seeing some rust coming out. But you don't want to bugger up your screw heads. You want to keep that screw slot clean, so we can get a screwdriver tip that gets all the way down to the base of that slot. It's going to fit tightly and not jump out as we turn it, and it's not going to get all nasty and, like I said, bugger up the head of that screw. I hate blowing on guns, but I don't know what else to do there. So we did get some kind of debris out of there. So I got a tip. We'll see how well that fits. And that's a good sign that that's the right size. There's not a lot of movement. Okay, and that's holding that screwdriver tip in there. There's no wiggle, no wobble. So when we go to loosen this up, we don't have to worry about this screwdriver tip jumping. Like I said, this gun's been taken apart before, and we can tell by the finish on it. I don't know if it's been 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, but we can tell that it has been taken apart before. So I'm not expecting a whole lot of rust here. Not expecting a whole lot of jammed up, screws. Like that one came out, and that's actually pretty darn clean. It's not. There's a little bit of rust there in that groove that we scratched out. But the rest of the screw, there's no rust underneath the screw head, and the screw threads actually look pretty good. Move over here, do the same thing. Oh, this one, these are easy. All right, so we're doing a preservation here on the gun that isn't in desperate need of one. That actually looks pretty clean too. We'll set those aside. All right, where we go from here? Let me get this ramrod, cleaning rod out of the way. We'll go here on the back of that action. I'm gonna use that same screwdriver blade, and there we go. Oh, this one here. Get this. I'm not sure how long this screw is. And look at this one here. This is not bad at all. Look at that. That's pretty clean. All right. And I can tell by the length of those screws. I don't have to worry about getting those mixed up in order. All right. So where do we go next? Let's get a different screwdriver tip. We'll take this trigger guard out. All right. So on this screw here, you can see the threads are a little bit buggered up. So we're gonna have to find the right size screwdriver tip that's gonna go in there. And because that tip is, now I can make sure that screwdriver tip is seated in there with my little tiny ball peen hammer. I'm just gonna reach across the camera here, grab this other screwdriver, and we'll make sure this thing comes out. Oh, look at that. All right, so the head of this was buggered up a little bit, so we know this is, whoever took this apart in the past didn't take as good a care. I got a little bit of rust there on the threads of that one. So whoever did this in the past did not take the kind of care that we're doing today with a selection of screwdriver tips. They probably just used the same screwdriver on every single screw. That's why some of these look so bad. Okay, what else we got? We've got the, looks like we've got the action screws out. I think this screw is just for the hammer. I'm gonna leave that for now. And we'll see if this will now separate. All right. Oh, there we go. Okay, there's our trigger group, came right out. And just what I was hoping to see, no rust in there. We'll still clean this up. There's a little bit of dirtiness in there. We will clean that up. Looking for any kind of markings or anything in there. We'll set that aside. So that's our trigger group. All right. So you've heard the expression lock, stock, and barrel, and that's what we're trying to separate here. We're going to separate the stock, the barrel, and the lock work. When I was a kid, I never knew. I was thinking of barrel like a keg or a barrel of whiskey or a barrel of wine. I never thought about the barrel of a gun when I heard that expression, lock, stock, and barrel. But obviously now that I'm around guns, I know it's a gun term. Look at that. All right, so there we go. And we do have some pitting. We do have a little bit of pitting down here. There's no bluing. So this thing, I think somebody must have taken this apart at one time and probably aggressively cleaned it up. But there's a little bit of pitting here, so it probably was pretty rusted, and they probably did an aggressive rust removal, which is too bad because I think we may have lost our bluing or our finish on these. And then this lock work, this should come right out also. Make sure we got all the screws out. And this should just lift out. There we go. Oh, there we go. All right. There. Oh, our springs are in good shape. Looking pretty clean. All right. These nice flat springs. There's our trigger spring, and there's our hammer spring. All right. Set that aside. All right, let me clean some of this mess up, and we'll tackle the rest of the stock. All right, so let's go ahead and take this butt plate off. And this is another one of those screws I want to take the pick and pick out. I don't know if you can see good kind of dirt that's coming out of this one. But this one's got some, there we go. Oh, this has got some dirt. The thing you have to watch out on this is you don't want to push this pick and run over and take a big gouge out of the end of that butt plate. So I'm kind of keeping my finger on this here so I can keep some downward pressure so that pick doesn't jump out. So I'm just going to push, just gently push whatever kind of dirt that is. Yeah, there we go. You can, let's see this, the amount of dirt and stuff that's come out of that. All right, so we've got this fairly well picked out, fairly well cleaned up. We got that same screwdriver blade that we did those action screws on. I think it's gonna be the same size. It seems to be a nice size. There we go, nice snug fit again. And this is a wood screw, so, oh, there we go. Hopefully it shouldn't be too rusted. You know, for the threads being rusted, but sometimes you'll see the head of the screw will be rusted to something like the butt plate here. You have to, like, obviously the threads are in the wood, but the head of that screw is up against that steel butt plate and those two metal surfaces, and there's a little bit of rust. There's a little bit of rust in there. We will address that. Let's take a look at this screw here at the end of the butt plate. We'll take this one out. Oh, this one's spinning easy. All right, no rust there either. All right. So, like I said, we already knew this gun had been taken apart. Just want to compare these two screws, and they are not identical, but they are pretty close. This one has a longer shank before the thread starts. So this is going to be our upper one, as our lower one. Keep those separate so we know which is which when we go to put this back together. And we're just going to be gentle here, gentle. Oh, there we go. You don't want to pop the grain there. And here we've got some rust. This will have to be addressed. That's a lot of rust, actually. There's probably be some pitting in there. That's going to have to be taken care of. And what I'm going to do is I'll put a little bit of grease in there before we put this all back together. But that's a nice, heavy steel butt plate. No holes like for a cleaning kit or hidden message or anything like that. Darn. All right, we've looked at this spring now a couple of times. We see it's below the level of the wood, and we see there is a nice coat of varnish on this spring clip. What this does, this holds that barrel band back when we go to disassemble and reassemble. And this is going to be driven out. If we turn this over, you can see this little bitty hole right here. If you're getting that, we're going to take a little tiny punch. We're going to drift that out from the top. Make sure I have a small enough punch and a small enough hammer that I can drift that out. Let's see what we got going on the other side. Well, you can see it's popped up now. We're up above the level of the wood, and see that spring action. That's the way it's supposed to be. But now let's go ahead and continue to drift this out. I've got my Starrett pin punch. You should. I'm using a very light hammer because I don't want to just whack this thing. And you can see now we have driven it out. It's taken us a little bit of how many taps was that? It's taken quite a few taps, but that's so much better than taking a heavy hammer, whacking that thing and blowing this spring out across the room and knocking my grain out. But we will see now that we'll take this clip out the spring the rest of the way just by hand, and we can see there's quite a bit of rust on that. So this obviously because last time they didn't take it out because we can see all that urethane coating on there. So we'll clean this up. We'll take the urethane off. We'll lube this up so it doesn't rust again. And when that goes back in there, we'll have a functioning retainer for that clip, or for that barrel band. All right, let's go on to the next one. All right, so we've separated all the metal from the wood stock. This was that piece that retained that cleaning rod, and I'll show you the orientation here. When it was inside this piece was inside the wood stock, and it retained that cleaning rod here in that groove, and this hole is where that retainer of that band went. Well, I'll show you the orientation of this later. But this piece was very difficult to get out. Had to wiggle, and it finally came right out. And if we see here, you can see the recess that it was in, just laid in there, right in that barrel groove. But now we've got all the metal taken off the wood. We can go ahead and attack this wood stock now. All right, so here's the wood stock. And we can see we have our proof P, and it's not depressed. This would have been stamped, so it should be depressed, and it's not. We can see there's a circle. It's a discoloration. And if we see, here's our acceptance stamp. I can't quite make it out. It looks like 1870. It looks like 1878, honestly. But again, it's not depressed. So it leads me to believe that this thing was sanded at one time. Somebody did knock that down a little bit, but not so much to where they removed that acceptance stamp or that proof P, but they did kind of take the raised wood around it down, but that discoloration that over the years where this took stain or it took dirt and it took oil, so you do see that the initials, and it does look like 1878. Maybe we'll get a closer look at that, but I do think this was sanded, but we're not going to sand it today. What we're going to do is I'm going to take a razor blade and I'm just going to scrape. I'm holding the blade vertical or perpendicular to the stock, and we're just going to scrape off this finish. You can just see it kind of piling up. So we're not removing any wood. We're just going to take that urethane, or I don't know if it's a polyurethane or what it is, a shellac of some kind. We're just going to take that off, and we're just going to leave us that nice bare wood when we're done. All right. So you don't want to see me do this. I'm just going to do the whole stock. I'm just going to scrape. You can see the pile of shavings we're getting here. I'm going to do the whole stock. I'm going to remove all of this finish. And then, like I said, with this without removing any of the wood. It's right there. You can tell I did not remove any of the wood, but I did take that finish off. So I'm just going to scrape the entire stock, and then we'll come back and see where we are about putting this thing back together and clean up that metal parts. All right, so I've spent a couple hours on this already, and just taking the razor blade and just scraping the stock, being careful not to dig any wood out, not to scrape any the wood fibers off. And we left the cartouches, we left the proof stamp on there, and I did find, I didn't see this before, but it does have a stamp on here. It says NGW. I have to do a little research, find out what that means. But when you think you're all done, you've scraped the whole thing, go back over it and just kind of lightly scrape, and you'll see I'm still getting some of this urethane finish off. All right. So once you think you've got it all done, you see it's like it's snowing in here. Once you think you have all this urethane off, go back and do it again. You kind of see, I don't know if you see all this. Yeah. And you can feel it. I'm not taking off any wood. Now, here's a moment for me to preach. The work I'm doing right now is I'm undoing what someone else had done before. Somebody sanded this. There are no dents. So somebody went and took all the dents out and sanded it. And, we almost lost that cartouche. We almost lost the proof P. We lost a lot of character on this gun. Don't remove anything. Don't remove any metal. Don't remove any wood unless you absolutely have to, because you can't put it back. All right. Once the wood is gone, once that metal's gone, they're not making these new stocks anymore. This is 150 years old now. Take a little care with it. Treat it like a piece of history. Like I said, don't remove it, don't modify it, don't change it. There's spots on here where somebody just kind of slopped that urethane on. We look at the butt there. You can kind of see where it just kind of drips and stains and stuff like that. If you don't have the skills to modify a 150-year-old rifle or to work on a newer one. Okay, perfect your skills. Go work on furniture, and then take once you've honed your skills, then go ahead and work on guns and things like that. But treat it like a piece of history. Be nice to these things. All right, so we've moved over here to where I've got a hot plate, and this pot is filled with distilled water. So there's no minerals, anything like that. We have all that removed, and I'm going to take that butt plate. Remember, that was the only piece that had that active red rust. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to boil that butt plate in a pot of distilled water. I'm using rubber gloves, or nitrile gloves, or latex gloves. They're not rubber. I've degreased that butt plate, so I'm using the gloves so I don't put my fingerprints and stuff on it. And I'm going to set that down into the pot of boiling water. We're going to leave it there for about an hour. Love all that steam. So we're going to set that piece down in there. come back in about an hour, and hopefully we can convert that red rust to a black oxide. We'll take a look and see what we got here in about an hour. All right, so we boiled our piece for about an hour, and we're left with a little bit of this flaky rust. I've chucked a carding wheel into the drill press here, and a carding wheel is super fine wire brush. You really can't compare it to a wire brush because that'll take, it takes everything off. And this is like I said, this is super fine. It's finer than hair. It is a wire brush, but we're going to card off that rust, and we'll put this we'll have this preserved so it doesn't continue to rust. We did that little conversion with the boil, and now we've stopped the rust from eating up our butt plate, and we'll get it all cleaned up here. And all right, so after just a few minutes with that carding wheel, you can see we've brought back that original finish. All that flaky red rust is gone. It's all been converted. The rust has stopped, and we're now ready to put this back on. Let's complete the rifle. All right, so here I have that hammer screw, which is like that main visual screw you see. This is retains the hammer to the lockwork, and I'm just trying to move that metal back where the screw head was all boogered up. I'm just trying to move some metal back, and after like about 1,000 hits with a little tiny hammer, a very smooth face hammer too, by the way, I'm just trying to move metal back so I have a nice, smooth, even screw head. I didn't want to just take a file and open up that and file off all that metal. I wanted to retain and keep as much metal as I possibly could. So I got a nice smooth finish now. That screw head looks better than it did. I'm going to talk to the gun owner if he wants me to blue this or just kind of leave it the way it is. But it is smoother. It is better than it was. But like I said, we're not doing a full-on restoration here. We're just trying to improve and make this thing look presentable. And I think that's where we're at right now with this screw. We'll put it back in the hammer, and we'll see how it looks. All right, here's that same screw. Now it's back on the hammer. And had I, filed it down or, put it and polished it and re-blued it, I don't think it would match. I don't think it would look very good. But moving the metal back, we still have the same patina, same amount of wear, same bluing effect as the rest of the hammer. And I think that looks, I'm catching it in the light here, I think that looks a lot better than it did. And it looks a lot better if I just had, polished it and re-blued it. It would really stand out and kind of look kind of silly. But this way here, you kind of almost don't even notice it anymore, which blends in with the rest of the gun finish. So we'll put this back together as is. All right, so just a little bit of gun oil, that 4/0 steel wool. I'm just going to take that cleaning rod and just kind of polish off any of that surface rust. And like I said, the 4/0 steel wool, it's not strong enough to take off the bluing. It's not coarse enough to take off the bluing, but it's just coarse enough to remove that surface rust. And I'm using that gun oil to kind of lubricate things and float off any of that rust that we're loosening up with the 4/0 steel wool. Kind of an ingenious design, this ramrod. It's got it's kind of grooved here at this end, so you have some grip, a little traction, and you've got a jag type end, so we can run a cleaning rod through it. We also got that blunt end, so we can push a cleaning rod through the barrel. All right, so we'll rub this off. I've got that gun oil on there and use that 4/0 steel wool, and just amazing. Can you see that? How much dirt and stuff you get off of this? When it looked clean when we started, just that little bit of 4/0 steel wool and a little bit of gun oil, we're getting all that surface rust and surface dirt off of there. We'll be left with a nice, clean, oiled surface when we're done. All right, and the devil's in the details, but we got a lot of surface rust. Ugh, you see it? Yucky. Ugh. Got a lot of that dirt rust off of there. And like I said, we did not at all harm that blued finish. That 4/0 steel wool is great at that. All right, here's that retaining clip that holds that barrel band. You can see it has that varnish on it, and there's a little bit of rust here from where the wood was inside, or I'm sorry, where the metal was inside the wood, and the underside of that spring is a little bit rusty. We're just going to take this, and we're going to clean it up with that steel wool that 4/0 steel wool and a little bit of gun oil, and you'd be surprised at how nice it's going to look when it's all done. All right, here you can see it's got that coating of varnish on it. You can see a little bit of that rust. The underside's a little bit dirty. We'll get this all cleaned up here, and we'll do a little before and after. All right, so just after a couple of minutes of that steel wool, a little gun oil, that nylon bristle brush, we removed all the rust. We got that urethane or whatever's on there, that varnish. Looks like that took off some finish. But we've got now our bluing back. We got the rust gone. And now hopefully we put this back together. We have a functioning spring here that retains that barrel band. Well, let's put this all back together now. All right, the last major, the last major piece we have to do a cleanup on is this barrel. And I think it would look silly having a rust blued or a reblued barrel on this old rifle. So we're just gonna do a thorough cleanup, and we'll put it all back together. All right, this is that piece that retained the cleaning rod, and kind of an interesting little thing here. It is patented August 18th, 1870. And this is also retained by that front, you'll see there's a hole there. That front spring that holds the barrel band in also retained this cleaning rod support. All right, so we'll get that all put back together. Right, so as we're doing our assembly, if I have a screw that threads into metal, I'll put a little drop of oil on it. But if I have a screw like this for this trigger guard and it screws into wood, I'll put a little bit of beeswax on there. That way I don't have to worry about oil, seeping into the wood or softening that wood up. So I'll put a little bit of beeswax on the screw, get it lubed up with a little bit of beeswax, and then we'll thread that into the wood. And that way, the next time I go to take it out, it'll come out a lot easier, and I won't have to worry about any oil ruining the fibers of the wood. All right, before I put the butt plate back on, I've got just a little bit of white lithium grease, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put ultra thin little coat of white lithium grease, and you can't even see there's grease on it. It just kind of looks wet. There's no real visible grease. It just has like a wet look. It's very, very thin. That's going to stop it from rusting. Where that wood and metal meet, it's not going to rust. That you saw how rusty it was earlier. That'll prevent that from happening again. We've got this beautiful butt plate now. I like that little the US and looks like number 29 stamped on there. But it's ready to go back on, and we'll have a completed rifle and no more ugly red rust. This is something I discovered that's kind of annoyed me. Is you can see how that screw on the front of that lock is raised up. It's almost showing about 2 threads. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shim the back side. I'm going to shim that screw there and hopefully eliminate some of that thread. It's a pain in the ass. You can snag your finger on it. You can feel that roughness. There's a definite roughness to that. Let me go and fix that. All right, so what I have is looks like a washer, but significantly thinner than a standard washer. And I'm just going to shim that screw. We'll see how this fits. Let's put that screw and the shim in place. And we'll check our fit. Using the appropriate size screwdriver. And when we're done, oh, look at that. It is now smooth, just about level, just about perfect. It's right where I wanted it, and that screw head's not sticking out very far, so we got the best of both worlds there. Let's put this thing let's call this done. All right, so we're done now with this this trapdoor Springfield. We did a few things that the owner will probably never even notice. Things like turn that stacking swivel around, and we shim that screw so that the end of that screw doesn't stick out too far. We conserve the underside of that butt plate, things that no one would really see. But those are all parts of a complete professional job. We didn't booger up any screws. We fixed a few screw heads. This gun now is, I wouldn't say it's museum piece, but it's certainly presentable, and it's certainly a good representation of what a trapdoor Springfield should look like. Hey, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. We'll see you in the next video.